We're in here for another Zoom at noon, and we're going to be talking about alternate tunings. This was requested actually by one of our webinar attendees, Steve.
Oh, nice.
Another time, so we're going to jump into it. I've experimented just a little bit with alternate tunings myself, mainly like open D tuning. Obviously, drop D is an alternate tuning, so that's one that we could. I think that's probably a good one to start.
That would definitely be like the starting point. Yeah, I'm not like the world's leading expert in alternate tunings, but I've experimented a little bit just to try and achieve different things. I also have to deal with different string intervals when I switch to mandolin or ukulele. Right. Although it's similar interval structure as a guitar, different. It takes kind of similar readjusting of like your brain. I think the cool thing about alternate tunings is that like you can kind of take two different approaches. You can sort of just have a really intuitive approach where let's just change the notes that are the starting pitches of this, try to use the similar or same shapes that I know, and let's see if we can get some new sounds out of the guitar.
Right.
Which is cool. I think I see a lot of people in the like math rock world. There's someone that maybe some people, maybe June knows about it. This girl named Yvette Kovic. So I think is her name.
Yeah.
Yvette Young. Yeah. She kind of takes that approach where she has like these types of shapes and lines she does. She's like a tapping person, not all the time, but it's part of her style. And I watched a video where she was talking about alternate tunings, and she kind of just described what I said. Like she likes to change the starting place of her strings and then just see like how does that affect like the ergonomic aspect of the guitar? How does that change things?
Right.
Which is kind of funny because it harkens back to a sort of way of approaching the guitar that's actually kind of comes from like some of the ways that old school jazz guys used to approach things. I remember Pat Martino came and did a workshop when I was at UArts when I was a freshman. He's one of the OG insane guys.
Yeah.
He did a workshop where he was like, it was generally talking about exploration and trying to find new ideas and sort of messing around with the guitar as like in like a playful kind of way to just sort of find new sounds. And he was like, what I started doing when I started out playing and I wanted to expand, I wanted to like take what I do and go into new places was I would take the same shapes and the same lines and ideas that I knew how to play, and I would just do it on a different set of strings because, it's not, if you do the bottom four strings, like this shape will give you like this nice, pretty major 7 chord. But if I do it on the next set of strings up, much different sounds because we have this major third interval instead of the perfect fourth. So I kind of like, I think it's a cool connection between these two different worlds. It feels like, math rock, jazz, where's kind of the overlap between those two things.
Right,
but it's like, they meet because we're, it's the same instrument. So we think similarly and it's cool. It's a different approach. The other sort of way of doing the alternate tuning thing that I'll get a little bit more into later on is kind of, I guess you could say it's a little more intellectual, sort of like planning what intervals that you have. Like, we have a set of perfect fourths on the bottom, a major third between the G and B strings, and then another perfect fourth. Sort of being like, okay, well, that allows me to do these sorts of things. I can still get like close position triads like this, but they're not so close that I can't also easily get these really wide interval sort of chords. Sort of taking stock of that and being like, okay, if I were to change to a different tuning, what's my goal? Like, what's the point? And you can sort of take it from that direction, which is kind of like the direction that Robert Fripp took. he has this whole other thing called new standard tuning that again I'll return to later on, but it's just this really like he's just like a wacky guy, so it's a really wacky tuning that allows him to do really cool stuff.
Nice.
But so yeah, the first sort of alternate tuning that most people run into is just drop D. So which is nice and easy to do because like you just saw, you can just play the bottom 2 or bottom 3 strings and just turn your tuning knob down, tuning peg down until you hear that just being a perfect like power chord essentially.
Right.
And it's a cool tuning. It's really popular in like the metal and hard rock scenes because it makes doing power chords from doing this like 2-finger position to just you got your 1 finger. Which is cool. I'm gonna turn my delay down.
Yeah, so the drop D, really what we're doing is taking that low E string and dropping it down, dropping it lower, a whole step down to D, which makes it so your first 3, so your 6th, 5th, and 4th string, because we number our strings from the bottom 1 up to the top 6.
Yeah.
So 6, which is weird. I don't get why we do.
It's so funny when I'd be like, "Oh, go 1 string up," and they go literally upward. And I'm like, "Oh, wait, no."
So we try to talk in pitch. That's a lot of it. Like that's what I always tell my students. It's like I will most of the time speak in pitch. That you're going up because pitch translates across all instruments, right? So that's why we talk in pitch. But so anyway, so your lowest string is a D, and then your next string is an A, which is a 5th above that.
Yeah,
and then you have another D, as opposed to a 4th, right? So and normally E to A is a 4th. Now D to A is a 5th, which is the power chord. Sometimes we call those 5 chords, right? Because they're just root and 5th. And then you have another D, which makes it an octave. So it's still that power chord shape. That's just wanted to give a quick little what we're doing when we actually have drop D tuning.
Yeah.
Especially for like any beginners that are watching this, like this is the one to start with as a beginner if you're messing with alternate tunings.
For sure. And again, that's like the powerful, like how you just described it. That's like the way to think about alternate tunings is that it's not like I'm just walking into this new field that I've never been before, and it's just all completely random stuff. What you're doing is you're just reorganizing the intervals of your strings and how far apart they are of each other.
And usually doing that to make it easier to play something that you're going to play, right? Like normally
a lot of alternate tunings, like the open string thing, whether it's the D major open string thing or another thing we'll get into is just a D minor variant of that Robert Johnson used.
Cool. I'm never messed with the minors, but Jude, that's something that you said earlier is like you're using open E for when you play slide. Yeah, like that's a very good when you play slide guitar. We use most slide guitar players use open tunings, right? Because not all. Yeah. Like there's definitely some that use standard tuning and they just adapt their playing just to work for standard tuning, but they're not able to do certain things that somebody with open tuning is, like sliding a whole chord up. You can't do that when you have standard tuning because we'll talk more about why it works with slide and with a lot of finger pickers also use open tuning.
Oh yeah. One of my recording clients, a really good friend, Dan Peterson, he's a folk dude. And that type of stuff is really popular in the folk world. I mean, every song he plays is in a slightly different tuning because it's, it brings it, like I said, it brings it to the ergonomic level. It's less, or at least this one side of approaching it. It's not really so much about like, I remember when I first started digging into alternate tunings, I was kind of confused. Like because I would change the tuning and then be like, okay, well, but how do I play a G chord? And I would do all this like mathematical sort of calculations, and it'd be like, okay, well, like this is just doing what I can already do, but just it takes a little more thought. So like, what's the point?
Yeah.
And it's like the point is just that like when you take a new tuning, you can just find natural ways that it likes to operate.
Yeah.
And it can potentially lead you to new musical territory, or you can take the positions that you already know or the shapes that you already know, apply them to the new tuning, and see if they create a new texture that you like.
Right.
And like we can do that right now. If you do the actual like the power chord that we're used to doing, they do it like 5th fret on the lowest string, 5th fret on the lowest string, and then 7th fret on the 2 upper strings. As opposed to
right.
you got this different new chord that you just discovered, and once you discover that you like it, maybe just you end there, you go into the next one, you're like, this was great fun. Or maybe you want to sit there and sort of figure out, well, what is it? Why do I like that? And if we're going to do that, instead of having just this clean root 5th octave power chord going on, you either we're lowering that root on the bottom. So now we have like a dominant 7th thing where the lowest note is a whole step below our root, but we still have 5 and 1 on top. Or you can look at it as we have this major 6th, because our 2 bottom strings are a 5th apart, and I'm taking my top note up 2 more frets, so it's bringing it up to a major 6th. So now this is G and E, and then A on top. So it's also kind of like a jazz chord terminology for this would be it's a 6/9 chord, which is just a nice. I don't know. It's cool,
So what would be like the typical usage of using like a drop D tuning though?
Yeah, so the more typical usage is that now you can just fly power chords around without even thinking about it really fast, which is why the metal guys and hard rock guys like it so much, because now instead of having to take this hand position and like go crazy all over the place, they can just like it's right. Like takes so much less effort, so much less thinking to achieve the same texture.
Right. And you're getting so it's pretty much that you can take one riff, a riff that would normally be a single string riff, and you've turned it into like a chordal riff, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what sounds that's what makes it sound really big. So, I mean, I would say with drop D, just go into drop D and experiment, just like what Rob was doing right there. Da 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 da. Like straight 8th notes are a good way to start, and just play around with, because you really can't go wrong with this drop D. We're not doing major or minor chords in the drop D, so there is no like relationship in harmonics with the major and minor chords. You don't have to worry about that. So like everything sounds kind of cool. Like chromatic sounds cool.
Yeah.
Like all that just sounds heavy and cool. It doesn't cool. And you don't have to think that much. I think that's the great part about drop D is drop D doesn't require a lot of thinking of what intervals I'm using. It's actually a very just like primitive, but in a good way, right?
Oh yeah.
You can just riff out. So King's Ash does some cool drop D. Yeah, and drop C is like a drop C, I guess, would be a whole
usually when we say, so if they say like drop and then it's some other letter, then
everything.
Then D, the implication, at least, it's all colloquial. It's just kind of like how people just like talk conversationally. What they usually mean is that if it's drop C, we have detuned our entire guitar to D standard, and then tuned our lower string down to C. So if I say like drop A flat, you know, the point is that my bottom 3 strings are going to be that A flat power chord.
Yes.
And then the rest of them are going to be in, what would it be at that point? B flat major, whole tritone, lower than standard.
So yeah, all of those are really kind of just lowering down, drop D and then taking it lower. Normally with thicker gauge strings, when you start going lower like that low, because when you start really detuning too far, the strings start kind of flopping around.
Start to hear the buzz, and you could probably even hear when I was doing you could hear a little bit of buzz on my lowest string.
Yeah. So if you're going
I can't wait until I tune it down to C later to see how much shit's buzzing.
Yeah, so you want to definitely, and I mean, Rob has a Strat too. Now, is your Strat hardtailed or is it floating?
It's floating.
Okay, it's floating. So that's another thing. Having a floating bridge makes it a little bit more difficult to get into some tunings.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a Floyd Rose, so I can still detune and do stuff like this, no problem. But it's not like, you know, it's if I wanted it to be truly floating and lift it up, I can do that, but I just don't really have it set it up like that.
Right.
I used to.
Yeah, right. So mine is more set up like that. So like my Strat, I don't really detune too much. I leave my Strat in standard tuning. It's set up for that. But I have a Telly that's hardtailed, or it's a Tellys are hardtailed. So hardtail just means that the bridge doesn't move right at all. With Strats, they have that tremolo bar.
Yeah.
Gretches have Bigsby's sometimes, and then Floyd Rose is the other like super divey one.
The bridge that every guitar tech hates the most.
Yeah, they're not fun to play with. They're fun to play with, but they're not fun to actually fix. So another cool thing that you can do while we're in drop D, that doesn't take a whole lot of knowledge or effort to be able to pull off, is now we have this super solidified power chord on the bottom, and our third string is just an octave above our bottom string. So we can think of it as our fourth string. We can think of it as this fourth string, our D string, is our root, and we can just sort of apply any kind of scale that we want, and we can play it hearing that D power chord underneath to sort of get like a flavor of the scale, or to just sort of like strum along, and we can kind of play like a melody riff kind of thing on our D string. So if I were to do this and just play like a D major scale going up our D string, it would sound like this. Nice.
And then you could kind of just like use that as this like basis to sort of try out some other modes, or even just like mess around.
That's very cool.
Yeah, you could just sort of, and
it's very
having that power chord just like it allows you to just really hear what's the flavor of this note in the scale. What sort of emotional value does it bring that the other notes in the scale don't?
Nice. And that's cool. You kind of have that like droning tone that makes it sound like Gregorian or or you could even get kind of like sitar-y, right? With that.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, if you like go up near the bridge.
Yeah. And Rob also like he played the major scale, and then he played like kind of a more like minor harmonic kind of thing on the way down. But because we're in a power chord, you can use at whatever scale you want. Well, every scale that has a fifth, right?
Hey, you can superimpose Locrian over top of a power chord.
Right.
Why not? The world's your oyster.
There's no rules. That's true. That works. But you could easily get away with a major or a minor scale.
Yeah.
or really any. But I mean, I don't know. Rob just
Yeah, and I mean, and for anybody
Rob
that's at the point in their lessons where they're starting to get into things like modes and scales and how we can sort of use these ideas, this is a great platform to really like sink your teeth into that in a way that makes it a little less theoretical and abstract, and sort of brings it back to this, you know, emotional musical place.
Cool.
You know, if I were to just be like, let's like see what the Lydian scale sounds like, which is just the major scale, but starting from the fourth degree, we can see what those intervals sound like. It's our major third, and then the cool Lydian note is the fourth one. You know, you can just sort of, rather than like just practicing your scales up and down the neck, which is certainly valuable and you should do, you know, you need to get the sound of these scales in your ears, and this would be a really good sort of way to just test out sounds and get acquainted with them.
All right.
Oh yeah, Tom Morello.
Tom Morello is God.
The next,
as a Jew,
I guess the
I'm not
next
supposed to write God out. You have to write G-D. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
That's a rule in Judaism. I mean, not that I strictly follow Judaism, but yeah, you're not supposed to write out the word God.
Huh.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know who, you know.
I guess the next logical step would to go in the dad-gad tuning, which just keeps our G string the same and everything else below it. Keeps all that nice and tidy, but it takes our B and our E strings, the top two, and it tunes them down a whole step so that it like kind of more directly brings it into D territory. So I'm going to do that real quick.
Yes, that very common finger picking. This is what you hear.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, this is one of those tunings that I've known about for a long time, but I don't have a whole lot of experience with.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, we could sort of step back, try two things. One, notice what the change of. Oh yeah, it is the Kashmir tuning. That's the one that they use on that tune, I think.
I always play that as drop D, but it might be.
Yeah. We can do two things. We can notice the intervals and the sort of chords that just are naturally arising from our just playing our open strings. And then we can also just take shapes that we already know how to play them on this and just see how they sound. So since the latter one is way easier, let's just do that. We know that our bottom is still going to be the same. We got these. So if I take I'm just going to take like a couple of major chord inversion shapes and just see what they sound like in this new tuning. So usually that would sound like this. That sounds like this.
Cool. Yeah.
Nice. Take another. This is also just a typical major chord shape, but just a different inversion. I actually really like that chord. That's that's like, so we have this power chord on top, and usually this chord would sound like this. There we go. I had to do a little bit of math for a second. Usually it would sound like this, but since my top two strings are tuned down a whole step, now this bottom note, which was my major third, is now it's now the sharp 11 or the blue note or just the note that is a half step below our fifth. That type of thing. And I think I remember seeing that a lot in not this specific shape, but the idea of like, what I've been doing these last two chord shapes is finding one that sounds cool and then just like, let's just move this shape around and see what it sounds like if I just move that same exact shape across the neck.
Right.
I feel like a lot of prog people do that, which shouldn't be any surprise that was my first my first guess.
Yeah.
But a lot of prog people would just like mess around with these things, find something that sounded cool, and then like, let's make a riff with that shape. This thing that sounds cool that I discovered.
Yeah. So looking at it more like more conventionally, if we were going to look at it. So if we're looking at dad gad, so again, we're starting dad. The first D is the low string, right?
Yeah,
the low in pitch. So we have a D, then we have an A, then another D. Now we have a G, which is a new one we haven't done. So we have a root, the fifth, the root again. Now what do we have? What's the...
Yeah, we got our fourth. If we're looking at it as part
fourth.
of a D chord, we got a fourth, so it's like a sus chord. Just sort of built into our tuning.
Right, a sus4, right? It's
which was the case with just the drop D, but now it kind of has the added stability of our top two strings are also A and D, so It sounds even more like a D chord rather than what before it would have been this, which is a cool chord, but who really knows what that is? Whereas when we bring those two notes down so that they're D and A as well, now it's like that's a sus chord.
Right. Got it. So
it's hard to bring that one down a fret to get to the third.
So if you play that second fret on the G string,
we got the same pitch as our next string.
So then you've got all A's and D's.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a cool way of even just playing with it, and then you're just using that G string as the melody, similar to like what you were doing with the drop D. Now that G string can become the melody. Like, we're just trying to give you ways to experiment with this stuff. Yeah, we could just show you how to play songs that use these open tunings. And that's great. Like, I mean, I could show you a couple of songs that I play with open tunings. But I think it's more important for you to understand like how to experiment with them.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to show you here, is that like how you can just kind of take these pretty common open tuning shapes and like then make them yours rather than just learn a song.
Yeah.
You know, like it's either color by numbers. Like, we don't want to teach you to color by numbers. We want to teach you to like, here's your palette.
Yeah.
Make whatever you want. That's the, you don't need to paint inside the lines.
Yeah.
You could get weird. And me and Rob and every one of you out there is going to approach it all differently. So like, Rob comes from more of a progressive and like classical background, right? Where like, and a theory background that he understands actually the intricacies much better than I do with theory and everything too. So he might approach it a completely different way than somebody who doesn't have any of that knowledge and is just going to go by their ear. But I think it's really cool that Rob's actually kind of going away from what he's more comfortable with, which would be to analyze, right? To analyze everything you're doing and just go by more of a feel and a sound perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like what we're doing is truly experimental, and the quickest you can just sort of get, not like that there's anything wrong with taking an analytical approach, which, we'll get to with the Robert Fripp thing that I mentioned. But, when you're experimenting, you kind of like, there's something about like quick access. You want to just sort of get your hands dirty and just sort of start seeing stuff and like not really think too much about it at first. Just sort of like a brand new child, just go into the world and just start seeing what's going on.
Actually, one of the most famous probably alternate tuning guitar players, Joni Mitchell, she did.
Oh, I didn't know she was an open string. Or
She actually, and her reasoning for it was apparently there we go, Jude. She had polio. She had some kind of disability that made it difficult for her left hand to do everything. So she messed with tunings to make it easier for her to play. Going back to what we said,
I didn't know that.
So that like a lot of her stuff is just tuned for that song. Like she has different tunings for every song just to make so. And when she explains it, she says there was zero analytical. Like at first when she did this, it was what is it? The necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
She just said, all right, my hand can't play guitar like I want it. My hands don't work like I want them to. Let me make the guitar work like to help me. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a very cool, I love that. And I mean, there's plenty of guitar players. I mean, Django Reinhardt had a disability.
Oh yeah.
That he turned into like, he had like 3 or 4.
He had his hand burned, and he first just completely lost his pinky, and then later kind of more or less lost his ring finger. And it's crazy when you listen to Django Reinhardt recordings because he shreds.
Yeah.
And it's like he does stuff that I can't do, and I have twice as many fingers as him on the guitar. Like it's absolutely mind-blowing.
What was Steven Stills? I don't know his
I don't know him.
Steven.
I saw two comments about him.
Well, he's in Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It was great. I mean, he wrote a lot of those tunes actually.
Yeah.
But what is his? I don't know his. I didn't know that he had some kind of disability. I mean, it's almost like can you call it a disability when like these guys have like overcome it to the point where they're better than everybody else? Like then it's like, no, dude, it's their ability. That's totally. Steven Stills used a ton of alternate tunings. Yeah. Like all that stuff. There's a finger picking guitar player that I really like named Kelly Joe Phelps. He's from like Oregon.
That's cool.
And he does some amazing stuff with finger picking. I got really into him.
Nice.
Like back in the days when you would buy like DVDs to learn how to play things. Or like,
oh man.
I had a couple Kelly Joe Phelps like instructional videos, which like 90% of those instructional videos were like worthless because it was just like some dude shredding over it. That's how you do that. And then you're like, dude, that didn't teach me anything. That just oh, nice. He used a lot of alternate tunings. Guitar tuning database. That's a cool little
is it just like a list of a bunch of alternate tunings?
That's a cool idea. That's awesome.
Nice.
So yeah, we could jump into that. All right. So after Gad Dad. I mean, hey, that could be a new tuning.
Yeah.
Gad Dad.
So yeah, the next step would just be taking our G string, bringing it down to F sharp. So that now we just have one big D major chord, which is great. I actually, I had a recording session with my friend Dan that I mentioned right before all the quarantine stuff started, where he had a song that had this. And if you're playing in this tuning and you're like, wow, my strings are just like they're going out of tune when I go on the neck, or like if it's overly buzzy or something like that. I ended up just tuning the whole thing back up a whole step. So it was still the whole major chord thing, but just it was on E so that the strings had more tension and a little more stability. So you could do this this D major tuning, or you could just take or you could just do the same intervals, but just starting from E. So tuning all these up a whole step. Should be worked out well. Ooh. Jared's about to play something.
This is a tuning I like. This one's got. I've got a couple that I could that I do. It's a beautiful finger picking tuning and slide tuning, but one of my favorite songs of all time, it uses this tuning. So I know I said we weren't going to show you songs that you need to learn, that you just to learn how to play them. But
Here we
if you're
go.
looking for one to impress your friends with, and
which is why we all start playing guitar to begin with.
it is.
It's just to impress people.
We all start to impress friends and impress girls, and then we stay home on Saturday nights to practice instead of
yeah.
instead of hanging out with friends and girls. So it's a trick that catches you in it. It's like it's a Venus flytrap music.
Oh man.
So I'm close now. This Allman Brothers tune, Little Martha.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to play the whole thing there for you.
Yeah.
But that's a great idea. And and then he finds some cool moves like, sorry, my
Yeah.
strings way out
So
of tune.
the thing that really speaks to me with this tuning is really just how I witnessed a bunch of my friends in the folk scene using this, which is kind of what you were just doing, where you're just sort of, you're droning this low tone that sort of gives you the basis for it. And then you could go and change your chords over top. And you can kind of like, it has this weird way of, you can like go out into the wild, but it still kind of feels like home the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting feeling.
And then he does, to go back, because we at a harmonic workshop, right? How he ends the song is...
Oh, nice.
It's like this really cool using the chords with the harmonics too, right? So that's a beautiful song. Little Martha, Allman Brothers. I remember when I first heard it, I was like, that's so cool. Those two guitar players are playing so beautifully together. Like, and then you realize like, oh, it's one guitar player doing all that. And that's the cool thing. I think what initially got me so into finger picking, was the Robert Johnsons, the Blind Lemon Jeffersons, the Mississippi John Hurt, where you were like, wait, this is one guy? How is this one person playing by themselves? Because when you've listened to just rock music your entire life, like, oh wait, I have all of these other picks that I can use at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
turns out I have 5 picks built into my head.
Yeah, what? This is crazy. All right, sorry for that interruption. I just wanted to we give you one musical example that you can jump in with.
So when we get into the dadgad, this D major tuning, and then next our D minor tuning, a kind of recurring theme is this attention to the third string, which is just like, this is the one that, like, since the rest of them, if I mute it, it's just this wide open multi-octave, like just root and fifth combinations.
Right.
Our third string is really what's going to divide things. So we can either I was still in a dadgad thinking. We can have it be the same. We can go into the third fret. I'm in the open D. We could go into the third fret. That'll make it the same as our following string, as our A string. Keep continuing that, but we can also bring it down a whole step to go to our fourth. And then we can resolve that to the major third. And those positions, if you're familiar with bar chords, you could just slide that, like our entire bar, like up to the fifth fret, which will bring us to the 4 chord of some variety, and then we can use our other fingers to do that same sort of manipulation. recurring theme I've noticed, that the third string in particular is like the string that's like, all right, here's where I make it sound fancy, you know?
Typically the G string, right?
Yeah, which is usually the G
F
string.
sharp string, but it is
right now. It's our F sharp string.
yeah, I know. That's the fun thing too. Whenever I'm talking drop D, I'm like, all right, now on your E string, which is now a D, but it's an E string. So, that's a good tip that I had not even really thought of. But the other cool thing about this, and this is why these open tunings work really well with slide, is that you're changing chords by just putting one finger bar, right?
Yeah.
It's a one finger bar to change chords.
And like a lot of the country music is extremely close to the blues tradition. So we're just talking 1, 4, and 5 most of the time.
Right.
Sometimes they'll go to the 6-chord minor, something like that, but it's really uncommon when you're talking about like OG stuff. So it's really easy to just like, here's my D major triad, which is my 1 chord. Here's my G and A, which is my 4 and 5.
Right.
It's just all nice and easy. You just need to think 1 finger.
Right. So just like what Rob was just doing there, right? I'm just going to replace that with a slide. And right now I'm just... Ooh.
Yeah.
You always hear that kind of... This is the... Actually, I think that Dwayne Ullman was more of an open E tuning guy than an open D, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I think in the slide tradition, open E is a lot more popular than down tuning like we're doing.
Yeah. What is it? I can't remember. At one point, I knew how to play some Dwayne Ullman riffs, but
oh, nice! I'm seeing Jude saying that he likes to do 6-2-5-1, which is kind of a jazz thing. Which I'm curious, Jude, if you're doing that, are you doing them all as major chords, or are you doing the 6 and 2 as minor chords? If we do, here's my root. If we go to the 6 chord, we got this, which is a half step above our drone strings. Which isn't, it's not wrong, but it's spicy.
Yeah. I mean, that sounded cool. I mean, that sounded like outside. That actually reminded me of like Bill Frisell or something, you know?
Yeah.
Bill Frisell would do some weird stuff like that. Like you're like, that sounds close, but it's not exactly right. That's Bill Frisell.
Something a little weird going on, says my brain.
That's awesome. Cool.
So then similarly, to complete our little triad of D major ones or D something ones, we could take this, our G string, and tune it down yet another half step, so that now we have instead our very dark minor chord. Yeah, okay. Whenever I tune from the major third to the minor third, it's like so hard to hear to hear whether the minor third's in tune or not. So like I said, this is really popular with Robert Johnson, the guy who apparently sold his soul to the devil or something like that.
There's a really bad documentary on that online.
Same concepts as the other ones, where our G string, now it's an F natural, a whole step down, but our G string, our third string, is the one that's still, if we mute that, we still have just all these root and fifths. So our G string is the one that we're going to use to really sort of bring some flavor to this chord, whether it's just the open minor chord. But since this is minor and he wrote blues music, the scale that he was using was just the blues scale. Shocker, I know. Mm-hmm. So a whole step above or on the second fret of our G string, we have our fourth. And then another fret up from that, we have our flat fifth, which is our blue note. And then that leads us to our fourth string, which is also our A string, the next string up. So he would do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I not really dove into that tuning for Robert Johnson.
Yeah,
but
he's definitely a finger picking guy, but I'm not, so I'm using a pick.
Yeah. And slide too. I mean, he was a finger picker.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like, ridiculous. Like, I love Robert Johnson, but like, it's harsh music to listen to. Like, it's because it's recorded in a bathroom. Like, it's recorded in a hotel bathroom. Like, all of his recordings are from like one weekend where he recorded in a hotel bathroom.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it like was
crazy.
It was.
They're also probably all wax cylinders.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they're all very similar songs. I mean, not all of them very similar songs, but like, he had a style. And he's incredible. I mean, it inspired American rock and roll
generation of blues music.
Yeah, I mean, like Eric Clapton, he's done full albums where he just plays Robert Johnson songs. Crossroad. I went down to the Crossroad, which is like one of the. I think Cream did do Crossroad, or was it?
Cream did Crossroad. They also they did another one of his I'm So Glad.
Yeah.
Which if you listen to the original recording of I'm So Glad, it's like he's doing the wildest finger picking stuff. I can't even comprehend it. It's like so fast, and he's just like singing like just like a child, just like having absolute fun with it. It's like, how are you doing this, dude?
And there is no multi-tracking. So he's playing that and singing it at the same time, playing all the parts, everything at the same time. That's what's amazing about Robert Johnson. He's got an interesting life story too. There's an awful documentary on him on Netflix, I think it is, so that you can check it.
I think I remember seeing the trailer for that.
He really,
I remember it's like because I did the theme with the Crossroads, and it was like a faux. Is it an actual documentary, or like is kind of like a faux storytelling kind of thing? I forget.
It was kind of like a storytelling kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they had just like all of these like awful graphics that would like just like it'd be like one picture that like they moved the picture. Nothing, no moving graphics, just like moving by them, just like getting
just cutouts
the camera. But anyway, he's he was also one who started playing guitar late in life. So, I mean, he died very young, so that also makes it easier to be later in your life when you die young. But he wasn't like he didn't always play guitar, which is why the legend has it he sold his soul to the devil for his guitar playing skill. Yeah. Apparently, he wasn't playing that long, and he was better than everything.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, no, I'm getting Robert Johnson mixed up with another person. No, all the stuff I'm thinking of is Skip James. Do you know him?
Oh, Skip James. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the minor guy. And I'm So Glad. I completely got those wires crossed.
I don't know. I'm So Glad isn't. I was like, I know all of Robert Johnson's catalog, and I was like, do I not know of a Robert Johnson song? I need to get into it. Well, Skip James, he died in Philadelphia.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There's actually one of my band's songs in Scantron. We have a song called Skip James. And the chorus of the song is Skip James, he died in Philadelphia. So I don't know if Scantron's lyrics are historically accurate, which I would guess that they are. So Skip James, check out that Scantron song too.
Yeah, Skip James, open D minor tuning. That was his thing. My bad.
Cool. No, that's good. That's good to know. And you allowed me to get a Scantron plug in here, so nice.
Yeah, there you go.
And Steve said Steve Vai versus Ralph Macchio in Crossroads. Yeah,
that was they're like doing the. Does that start? Is that when they're like also doing the Paganini thing from the movie?
Oh,
Am I just getting other wires crossed? Oh my
I
god.
think you're getting the wires.
Oh man.
You know what? I don't like that because Steve Vai threw his guitar.
It's funny.
All right, and then you just had like the last part, right?
Yeah, so Robert Fripp, he developed this thing called New Standard Tuning, which ironically, unrelated to preparing for this and thinking about doing this workshop, I just thought of it like last night as like as I was going to bed, like I should mess around with that. I could probably do some things that I'm into. But he wanted to accomplish a couple of things. He wanted to extend the range of the guitar a little bit more without having to add more strings. And he also wanted to make the guitar a little bit more like a cello. So cello is like violin and viola in the sense that they're tuned instead of fourths like on guitar, it's a stack of fifths.
Right.
So his lowest string is all the way down to a C, so I can't wait to see how much buzz this has. What would that? Yeah, okay. That, and then it just goes up in fifths. So then a fifth up from C is G.
So I'll do it together.
And then D above that, which is already our D string. And then we got an A, which, oh God, hopefully my strings don't break. Fourth. Try to. There we go. Okay, A. And then he tunes his B string up to an E, which, can I responsibly do that? That's a question.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. But so the cool thing about doing fifths, about doing this like fifths tuning, which after the E, he just goes up a minor third, because if you were to go up he would be going up to from E, he would be going up to B. I don't think there's an E string in the world that wouldn't snap when you're trying to tune it up to a B. So, just
some of those, like, he might be using some of those like those Nashville strings, like the Nashville tuning strings where you like, they're like 7 gauge.
Yeah, like the jazz fusion world, like the eights, the 8 gauge string sets were kind of hip. So maybe he's using some of those things. But the major point that we can accomplish with this and how it's cool is that we got this huge open stack of fifths that's just like much naturally wider than what we're used to. So all of our chord shapes are more or less out the window. Like I said, we could still do that same thing where we just take a chord shape we know and just try to see what it sounds like, which this one sounds pretty crazy. Cool stuff. But it opens up new possibilities. Like I said, he came at this from more of an analytical angle. He had a specific sort of goal that he wanted to accomplish with it. So he sort of needed to enter into it thinking like, how can I use this? And it's a little bit easier for me to understand all this stuff because I'm used to fifths tuning from mandolin. So all these chord shapes, I already know what they look like and what they feel like. But the cool thing about fifths tuning is that now your closed position triads, which are just 3-note chords that all the notes are right next to each other. So you'll play a C, and then an E directly above that, a major third, and then the G directly above that. Nice. That's like, if I were to try to do that, it's like, like I literally can't. It's like the most stretched out chord shape that I can sort of make it work on mandolin because it's extremely small. But with guitar, it's just impossible. So it kind of pushes you into what's called open voice chords, which are just chords that stretch across a couple of octaves. So the top and bottom note of this chord shape, they're the same, but they're just 2 octaves apart. And then I use the other 2 notes stretched out to sort of fill up the space. And it's just a regular old major triad, but it just sounds super big.
That's cool.
Which, just a different sound. It sounds cool. So it's not the most accessible because Robert Fripp was a brainiac freakazoid. So, of course he made like the most difficult tuning to adapt to ever. But, if you sort of take it on its own merits and try to explore it and understand what it can offer, it's pretty cool. Other little things that I like about doing fifths is that now doing sixths and sevenths are way easier across two strings. So we have our fifth, just like drop D. We got our fifths, and right above that our sixth, and then our dominant seventh, and our major seventh. Which, if I were to try to play that interval on two adjacent strings on a regular guitar, I would have to really stretch my hands. Yeah. And even then, I don't have the biggest hands, so I don't think I could do it if it were in lower positions. But with this, it's super easy. And to bring it back to something that's probably a little more familiar, in blues music, you have or rock music, rockabilly type stuff. You have the, now that's not just possible on our lowest strings when we have an open drone string and a string that we're fretting above that. Now we can do it wherever we want. So we can, we're not relegated to just doing like 1, 4, 5 stuff. Now we can do stuff that, maybe we want to do that riff, but move it in minor thirds. Maybe our name is John McLaughlin. Now we want to do wacky stuff like that.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's really cool because I think that's taking it another direction, which is like after you experiment with all of the conventional ones, start thinking outside of the box with all of this, because that's really the whole idea of all of this. Is to get outside of the standard tuning rut. You're going to look at your guitar differently. Like, I know you could spend your entire life just learning guitar and standard tuning, and you'd have a lifetime's worth of stuff to learn. But it's also cool to just break out of just that one groove that you're in and check out some other ways that you can go. And Jude mentioned using open E tuning. Open E tuning is going to be the same as open E tuning.
Yeah.
A whole step. So like you want to try and think of a good thing to do is like just, all right, name any chord. Say I want to do an open A tuning. Well, what notes are in my A chord? A, C sharp, and E, right? So I've got A, C sharp, and E. Now, I want to look at my normal standard tuning, E, A, D, G, B, E, and then figure out, all right, how do I get to certain notes the easiest, right? So for instance, this E and this E are good. We don't need to change those, right? This A is good. We don't need to change that. All right, D, what is the closest to D? C sharp or E, right? But C sharp is right there. So we'd take that one to C sharp. The G, sorry, it's like it goes backwards from.
It's so hard to predict.
I know, it's so hard to get it. And then G, I'd go to A, right? B, I'd probably go to C sharp because I just have an A right here, and I don't want to have two A's next to each other. But that's not. You could make the A and then have two A's on different strings right next to each other, and that's going to sound different because now you have two. They're the same note, but they're different gauge strings, right? So that's going to change the tone of the strings. So you could do that with any chord. Just break down your triad, and you can do it with major chords. You can do it with diminished chords. You can do it with whatever you want. And then just look at where you are with your standard tuning or whatever your tuning you're in and how you're going to go in. So just to do this, to make sure everybody gets what I'm talking about here.
Just picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. A and then B, I would probably do a C sharp and then I'd have an E. So this would be one way of doing, right? It'd be one way of doing an open A tuning, right?
Yeah.
Dude, what do you say? Alternate tunes are cool also because they make you think about the fretboard entirely differently.
Yeah.
Yes, catching what you're casting. I like that. Catching what you right. It's going to make you look at everything because all of your scale shapes are now different. They're the same on a single string, right? Your single string scale shapes always stay the same because those are the intervals. It's the intervals between the strings that are changing.
Yeah.
Makes it that's why so when you start moving down the fretboard or down the strings, that's what's going to change. All on one string, all your scale shapes are the same. And that's what Rob was talking about is like if you hold on to one string and just play on one string, take it one at a time, right? Or don't experiment and make it weird. I don't care. That's the entire point. Is like it's kind of great because Rob Kraft is showing a little bit more of like the technical stuff that goes into playing guitar with different picking stuff, and then Rob Wickline's been showing kind of more of like how to get outside of that box, right? So I think you're getting a lot of really great information from these. I am too.
Experiment.
Yeah, right.
Do things you've never done before because why not do them?
Right, exactly. Well, does anybody have any questions for Rob or myself? If not, we will catch you next time. Actually, tomorrow we're back with Rob Kraft tomorrow. He's going to be talking about hybrid picking tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
So
very powerful tool.
Which actually I've never really experimented. I mean, I've done a little bit of chicken picking, but I'm not good at it. So so that's going to be a cool one. I'm looking forward to that one. And then I'm sure Robbie Dubs will be back.
Rob Dubs.
Rob will be back rolling on dubs. Rolling on dubs soon. Well, thanks, Jude and Steve, and anybody else who was listening in on Facebook Live. This was a lot of fun. We will post it on our Facebook page afterwards and our YouTube channel. So if you ever want to catch back up, or if you ever have any questions about this stuff, ask me and Rob. Again, Rob and I are not experts on alternate tunings, but we're curious about it. And if you have a question that might get us going a little deeper, we're happy to talk.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, thank you, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your Thursday. It's a beautiful day. Let's get outside.
I know. I'm about to go for a walk. I can't wait.
Get outside. Oh, good. Glad, Steve. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if there's anything more, again, we don't know a ton about alternate tunings, but I think that was a really good place to jump. It's going to get you started. I mean, if you just take one of these and play with it for a day, that would probably be a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Whenever
if you sit down with the tuning, just be like, take some familiar shapes or positions, or take one of the ideas that we were talking about with using the one string and just like make a riff, be like, all right, if I were to use this and try to make a song with it, what would that sound like? How am I feeling? How do I want to react to this? And just sort of make that a little practice goal.
And Rob was doing this too, where he took the position of a normal position. It might sound a little weird, and then he moved one finger, one fret. One at a time. Move one thing at a time. Experiment. It's like variables. Like move one variable. Don't move all variables. If you move all variables, then you don't know what changed.
Yeah.
So,
you need to keep some stuff consistent and make minor changes so that you can see what the impact of that minor change was.
Perfect. All right. Long ending, but we're good. All right. Don't rock that dial. I'm working on sign-offs.
Don't rock that dial. In the age of digital streaming.
Yeah, exactly. Don't rock that. I'm going to take it way back, Adjust those rabbit ears. All right. Jude has no idea what I'm talking about, I think, with rabbit ears. See you guys. Peace.